Hi, this is Doug Bradley, Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies, and you are listening to Without Your Head. And you'd better keep listening to Without Your Head, or you will not only be without your head, you will be without your soul, because I will tear it apart.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by director, producer, actor, Rick Chandler. I think he's also a photographer. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good, thanks. So you got a lot of different projects. We'll try to talk about all of them. The one I just saw recently was Witch Hunt. If you'd like to tell people what that movie's about and how you can see it.
Right now, the only way you can see Witch Hunt is to send me a private message. I am in talks with somebody right now about possibly releasing it. I just don't want to say too much just in case, it doesn't happen. But hopefully soon people will be able to check that out, at least on DVD. But yeah, what is it about? It is, see, the thing with my movies, sometimes I have to pause and actually think for a second what they're about, because they're about too many things.
Right.
They're a little convoluted. So, it is about a bunch of witches, for lack of a better term. They kind of like stroll up to this town, and this weird stuff starts happening, and this priest starts questioning his faith because of events that take place in his adolescence, and this attracts to the town. It attracts this brother-sister team of witch hunters from Bosnia, and then a lot of weird shit happens from that point.
Right. I think that totally made sense and captured what the movie's about.
Yes.
What's your background in how did you start to make movies? Is it something you always want to do, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started off writing books when I was kind of like in college, and a couple of years after I like really focused on that. I guess not a couple of years after, because then I transitioned into films. But I wanted to, write scripts, tell a story, but there's just not a lot of people that want to take your idea and your story and, run with it and to make a movie with it. Mm-hmm. So I started to get into the producing side of things, and then it just kind of spiraled.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you work with a lot of people, obviously in Boston because you're from Boston, but I noticed that a lot of the kind of the underground Boston movie makers, they work on each other's projects a lot, even if it's just having a cameo or doing different things. What's the whole community like in the Boston area for these kind of movies?
For these kind of movies, like you said, I think people are pretty cool with each other, because there's only a couple groups of people around that are really doing the kind of horror exploitation sort of style, like the true horror exploitation style. And I think that those groups of people will help each other out. I think that's why the last two projects that I've done, I think have been pretty big collaborations. I think there's this whole other New England film scene that's completely different. And, that's something that I've experienced as it's just an actor going around and auditioning and stuff. And people, they're not as into the over the top stuff, so it's like they're into the whole, either what Hollywood is doing when they're in town, or into the cop movies and the boring horror, as I like to call it. So it's they're into the all that stuff. So it's you got kind of a couple schools of thought out there, so I think it's interesting to use the term Boston underground, because that really is what it is. I feel like it's almost separate from what everybody else is doing around here.
Mm-hmm. And when did you what's your company called? The Boston Film Family?
Boston Film Family, yeah.
Sorry, Boston Film Family. When did that come about?
I think around 2010. I made movies before that for a bit, and then I guess that was just a turning point where I was more organized, shall we say.
And Like, how do you get connected with the other people? Is it just, you start making these movies and then, you look for different people who can do different things and you meet everyone and start to network?
Yeah, I guess it depends on, like, who you're talking about. As an actor, I've gotten around a little bit. Like, I've worked for Matt Fisher from Boombastic Films. I've worked for Paul and Dave from Ungovernable Films and stuff as an actor, and then they'll lend a hand to my projects and stuff like that. And in terms of like other people in the crew and stuff, I've kind of found them through different means, either putting up ads. Some people have approached me through social media, sometimes even photo shoots. Like people will. You'll meet people through that, and they want to get involved in the movie stuff. And sometimes, to me, that's the best way to really meet people, is through almost like other aspects of artistic stuff, and then like they bring their expertise to the table that way.
Mm-hmm. I know Cancer Slug did the music for Witch Hunt. How did you get in? How did you get them involved in it? And normally, how do you find like music to use on your different projects? Do you approach like independent musicians?
Well, that's it. With Cancer Slug, it's an interesting story, actually. I've seen them perform a couple of times, and I was just a fan of their music and wanted to. It just fit Witch Hunt in a big way. I wanted to see their music, in the film, and I said, it's going to be hard to get in contact, but I saw Alex Story at, I think, Rock and Shock 2 or 3 years ago, and I just approached him and I started talking to him. He's like, "Yeah, all right, man." He's like, "Cool, yeah, just do it." And I always thought it was funny. I always thought it was funny because I said, "Well, do you want to know which songs I want to use?" And he's like, "I don't give a fuck." He's like, if it's indie, he's like, "Just do whatever you want."
Yeah.
I always found that funny because I don't know if they've ever seen the movie. I did send them a digital link, but yeah. So as far as other artists, sometimes I'll reach out and just get a feel for if they're friendly, to indie movies, or if they're sometimes people look at it and they want to see the script in the movie, and then it gets kind of convoluted.
Mm-hmm. Well, after you send the link, at least they didn't say remove our music. So if they watched it, they must have dug it. Yeah.
Well, it's violent and fucked up, and so is their music. So they figured they'd like it to some magnitude.
Yeah. Now, I know you're a wrestling fan, and there was a line in Witch Hunt about the new face of fear. I was just wondering if that was like a nod to Bray Wyatt.
Oh, is that something that the Morgan character says?
Uh-huh.
The witch? Oh, okay. Maybe it was a subconscious nod to Bray Wyatt. I didn't really think about it.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it was. Maybe Bray Wyatt was getting in my head.
So,
I was following the buzzards, I guess.
Where did you film the Bosnia and Herzegovina scenes?
There was a studio in, I believe, Chelmsford, Mass, and it was like a photo studio that just was kind of like had a little back area that was kind of falling apart. And we had, my friend, he has like a driving school, and we got the desk from that, and we just brought him up there and filmed there, and it looked legit enough. The interesting fact about that location, that's where I met the girl, the wardrobe designer, costume designer, Jenny French, who does all my costumes and stuff. We actually met there on a photo shoot, and then I ended up, she ended up doing the costumes for that film and Parts Unknown, and then we used that location too. So it's kind of interesting now that I'm thinking about that out loud.
Yeah, and there's kids in that scene, obviously, and when I was a kid, my mom would have had no problem me watching movies like this or being in them. But is it hard to find someone to let their kids be involved in a movie like Witch Hunt?
You know, it was like easier than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was going to be the hardest thing. And those two kids, we cast pretty quick. Like, they came to the auditions that we had for it. And I was surprised. Mm-hmm. We had extras in it, too. Like, kid extras in it.
Yeah.
And I was a little surprised, yeah. I was surprised, like, the parents were down to have the kids in it more than some of the local actors and actresses are down to be in fucked up movies. So,
is that a problem? Do you have to bring people in from other areas?
Oh, I've had to. Yeah, I've definitely had to. Like I said, you know, there's different schools of thought mm-hmm. in terms of the local acting around here, and you have the quote unquote New England film scene, and then you have the more like underground, you know, like fucked up movies. And I've cast models, you know, I've cast wrestlers and stuff like that. You know, people that they're looking at it from a different perspective, you know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they work out better than other people because they have a different mentality. You know, they're not worried about what some friend is going to think. Like they have a, you know, an artistic viewpoint towards it.
Yeah. You mentioned wrestling a couple times, and myself, I do a wrestling podcast and a horror podcast. I always loved both since I was a kid. And like at horror conventions, it seems like wrestlers are starting to be like a normal guest at horror movie conventions. Why do you think there's like that overlap in fans between horror and wrestling?
You know, I don't know if there is with the current casual fan mm-hmm. of WWE and horror, but from like people in, you know, like my age group, like, you know, when we grew up and we watched wrestling, you know, we grew up watching like the Attitude Era and ECW, and mm-hmm. it was kind of like racy. It was bloody at times. And I think like that kind of mindset is really like the horror mindset. And I think like I could definitely see the same fans, you know, in a certain age bracket just digging that type of stuff. That like they'd be fans of both horror and wrestling.
Yeah, that makes sense. More like someone who, if they're wrestling they grew up with is, you know, John Cena or something. Like maybe they wouldn't be into like really bizarre,
right.
Or underground kind of crazy horror movies. Plus, it's just something about wrestling that it's its own genre. It's not necessarily a sport or mm-hmm. movies or whatever. It's just its own weird thing that you can like for many different reasons.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot to wrestling. You know, you have the casual fan that'll come over to my house to watch it on occasion. They'll be, you know, they'll see. They're not seeing everything that you're seeing as someone who's watched it.
Yeah. For
a lifetime. You know, I think there's a lot of subtle nuance to it that you just grow to love or hate, and mm-hmm. it just makes it entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Who were your favorite wrestlers when you started to watch it? Like, who got you sucked into it?
When I was a kid, you know, it's as much as I hate to say this now as a 34-year-old, but uh-huh. I was a big Hulkamaniac. You know, I think we all were at that time. And, you know, I think it was, you know, Hogan, he pulled me in, and, you know, my other favorite at the time was probably Jake the Snake Roberts, he's in Parts Unknown. So
yeah, that's really cool.
He is involved. And I think those were like my favorites as a kid. And, you know, once I got a little bit older, obviously I started to, you know, follow The Rock and Stone Cold and, you know, all the big mm-hmm. Chris Jericho, you know, all those like names. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little older, so I actually wasn't a Hulkamaniac. I was a Piper fan in the 80s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the only wrestler I ever had a poster of on my wall was Roddy Piper. That was definitely my favorite. But so how did you get?
I've been disappointed Piper never became champion.
Yeah, I know. It's you know, back then the belt didn't change hands very often. So there's only a few guys that were champ in the 80s, but I think you could probably name like a dozen guys from that time that would be probably multiple time champ today.
Yeah.
But
True.
so how did Jake the Snake get involved in Parts Unknown?
Let's see. I was looking for somebody to do a cameo. He was at Rhode Island Comic-Con, and I talked to somebody at his table, and just they were down with it, and just eventually, we set something up, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. What was he like to work with?
He was cool, and he had a good attitude about it. He was prepared.
Mm-hmm. So I've interviewed him several times, and a few times was a while back. So it's no secret. He was messed up at the time, and you can, if you listen to the interview, you can tell. And since then, he's cleaned up, and so he seemed like he was in a good state of mind.
He seems like it, yeah. It was the typical celebrity thing when you do the cameo with them. You got, the shortest amount of time possible, and they're gone. But I mean, other than that, he was prepared. I feel like the Jacob Snake of old would not have remembered what we had talked about. So, I'll give him that.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting guy, and one of the best promos ever. And
yeah.
So tell us about Parts Unknown.
Well, Parts Unknown is, I'll briefly say what the plot is. It's basically about a family of wrestlers called the Von Strassers who they're kind of down on their luck. They're all kind of leaving the business unwillingly for various reasons. And they immediately have this void where, they have, they just have a void in their life, and they're trying to fulfill it with something. And, there's like a dark force that they end up coming into contact with that kind of gives them the direction that they're looking for. And, much violence ensues from that point.
Uh-huh.
And it is it's bar none the most violent movie I've written.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that too.
So I think that's got to be saying something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the effects are very practical, so there's a lot of gore in it. No CGI and stuff. So it's pretty much like whatever we're showing is probably is intended to be pretty gross. Mm-hmm. So, it's got that kind of gross factor to it,
Yeah. Now, when you make a movie about wrestling, now do the actors have to take any wrestling practice? I don't know how much like in-ring stuff you show in the movie.
We actually show a decent amount of in-ring stuff. We were lucky enough to be able to cast some people that can wrestle. I don't know if you know who William Dukoff is, but he's been a local actor. And before that, he was a wrestler, and he's the main character in it. He was a wrestler. Sarah Michelle, who I've actually worked with for a long time, was a wrestler before she acted too. And we cast another wrestler, Lizzie Havoc, who plays another one of the important characters. And she's new to acting, but she was, a wrestler. Mm-hmm. So there's actually a decent amount of in-ring in it. It's actually more cohesive than I thought it would be, considering, it is just a lower budget movie.
Yeah. So where do you find rings and stuff? Do you work with any local independent wrestling companies?
Yeah, I do. We did our in-ring rehearsals at Showcase Pro Wrestling in Rhode Island, so they were cool enough to have us down there with John Callahan, who's a professional wrestling coach. So it was nice to be able to get down there. I'm renting a ring from Belltime Wrestling, and they're going to bring it down on location next week, as a matter of fact, and we're going to shoot those in-ring scenes there. And I also do some gigs here and there for a company called Nova Promotions. They're in Rhode Island right now at use the XWA Arena. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I've been an on-air character for them and stuff. So I got a couple of like connections, I guess, in the area.
What kind of character are you for them? You're a manager, or announcer?
I'm the general manager.
Oh, very cool.
The general manager character. I kayfabe quit so I can go and shoot parts unknown. But hopefully I'll be back with a vengeance in a couple months.
Yeah. So, did you have any wrestling training yourself?
No.
Was it ever
I'm just
anything?
a giant mark.
Okay. Was it ever anything you thought about doing?
It's really weird, but I think about it more now than I even did before. Because before I think I'm in better shape now than I was, or like at any other point in my life.
Right.
I'm not going to do it for the sole fact that I'm too old. But the way I look at it is, it's like, what they have to put themselves through is like insanity. So I feel like you have to start at a young age to do it. But it's certainly, I never really seriously considered it. It would have been cool. But yeah, like I said, what they have to put themselves through is insanity.
Yeah.
I'll stick to the mental anguish of filmmaking for now.
I did a commentary for a local wrestling, which I think I put out of business because it folded soon after that. But it was a fun experience anyway. And it was just real quick. It was funny because local manager, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Johnny Fabulous, used to work a lot for him. And I remember people would chant John Cena at him, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing that?" And I never knew until he was on WWE TV, but he's John Cena's father. Then after he was on TV. Oh
yeah, okay, yeah, I have seen him before. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, he's very funny because it's very old school kind of 80s heel manager role.
Yeah, I've seen him somewhere. I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, isn't that John Cena's dad? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, then after that, he just started to call himself John Cena Sr.
Yeah. Might as well, I guess.
Yeah. So, the wrestling aspect of Parts Unknown, what's more of like the horror part of it, and how do they connect? I know you kind of went over the movie there, but...
Well, the family of wrestlers are obviously wrestlers, so they end up wrestling in the movie. That's the wrestling connection. How the horror connects is they start killing people. They start killing a lot of people, and I guess that's how it connects. There's a woman's match in it that is I think it's the bloodiest, most graphic scene in any of my movies. So as far as I'm concerned, that's also horror. It's kind of like just complete and utter bloodbath, and there's some mutilation mixed in. So I think it's pretty horror.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of different like subgenres of horror and what people like or consider horror. What aspects of horror do you like? You like the gore and bloodbaths?
I don't, believe it or not, I don't like gore for the sake of gore. I'm not big into like just the sheer shock value. Like we're just gonna do something so gory or so sexually explicit that it's just there for shock. Now that's fine for certain filmmakers, like to do that. They do it through their whole movie, and that's fine. I just feel as though that's not my style. I like to tell a story, and I like it. I like to build up to an important character that you start to care about. They die. And, sometimes it's just not as satisfying anymore to just see them die. You need to see them get mutilated. So I think I'm kind of into horror with a plot. Sometimes I like to call it higher brow exploitation, because it's like, I like all the crazy stuff, but I like when there's like a reason for why it exists. It's not just a guy going on a killing spree and, shooting the place up. It's just, you know.
Yeah. I got a message here actually from Paul McElharney. He wants to know, what did you think about the gangbang scene in Gay Jesus?
Well, I was standing right there, and because I had horns in my head at the time, and well, two things. Gay Jesus was a very fun movie. The second thing I'll say is standing there watching that gangbang, you can smell everybody's fucking BO, and you can smell, what the fuck was it? There was something else that made me pukey. It was like it was one of the vinegar, because they had vinegar for one of the effects. And I was like, that combination of like male junk and vinegar, I'll tell you, you ever want to puke, just create that cocktail, and just, no pun intended, cocktail,
I like that, yeah.
and boom, you're going to start puking. So that's what it smelled like in there. But poor Sam Hayes, he got, yeah.
He took one for the team, but yeah, I like Gay Jesus, by the way. I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. Yeah,
and I think it actually sticks pretty well to the Bible. Yeah, I like Paul's movies because they all have a lot of social messages with all the craziness.
Yeah, definitely. I like the political commentary in there. Mm-hmm. Definitely standing out rather than people just getting gangbanged. There's a reason behind it.
Right. There's a message behind gangbang. So if they ever do perfect some type of smell-o-vision or something, that would be perfect for gay vision, for gay Jesus. Jenny French wants to know, ask about the amazing cast and crew working on Parts Unknown, which I know you've gone over some of them.
Well, let's see. For cast, I mentioned William Zakoff. It stars William Zakoff and Sarah Michelle, Alexandra Coppola, Lizzie Havoc, and Alex Hawke are probably the main characters within some of the crew. Jenny French herself is doing all the costume designs for it. I should probably say this about the movie too. It has like a very weird style to it, like almost kind of like an 80s Coke Dream style to it. So it's got some pretty like outrageous and creative wardrobe in it. Mm-hmm. And in lighting by our DP Dinez McAdoo. Not sure if I'm saying his name right. Mm-hmm. But we got a bunch of other people. I don't know if they're listening, so I guess I'll just name them. V Hyde is his FX supervisor, doing all the practical effects, and my assistant directors are Matt Fisher, who I know is listening, and Mike O.D. I think you know Mike O.D.
Yeah, I know Mike.
And there's a whole bunch of people are working on it, and Paul McClarney's he has a cameo in it too, speaking of him.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Now, you mentioned Jenny French. Did you say she also did the wardrobe? Yeah,
for Witch Hunt Parts Unknown.
Mm-hmm. Now, does she do the wardrobe in all the movies?
Just those two, and then our last short that we did for 60 Seconds to Die 3.
Yeah. Oh, how did you get involved in that, by the way?
I've been involved in like all of that stuff from was Body Bag Pictures. It was I think this is a weird statistic. I directed a segment like 7 times for them or something insane, and then I acted in like 5 more of them for different people. I got involved because I was in a segment. Dave Sullivan cast me to go in a segment for Nicholas Principe, who was shooting something in Worcester. And then from there, the guy running it contacted me and was like, hey, I should start putting some shorts in here of your own. And I was like, no, okay. And I think we've done 5 of them. So, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I remember when I was, I had the screener for Grindsploitation too, and it was cool watching it because, like, so many people, I know from the area would, their shorts would come up or they'd pop up and stuff, and yours was pretty crazy on that one.
Yeah, that was another. We had 2 weeks off during the production of Witch Hunt, and we decided to keep shooting, which is weird thinking back on it. Mm-hmm. And we shot that. Probably know Nick Norman, but that was in his band's rehearsal place, and we shot that there. And we're like, hey, let's just make something really fucked up. That was the idea of it. That was it. That was Grindsploitation 2.
And it worked. You succeeded.
It did. It was gross.
Yeah. Now, maybe this would be more of a question for Jenny, but when you're doing like the costumes and stuff for a independent film, I assume there's not a lot of money for that. Like, how does she go about finding stuff? Do you go to thrift stores, or does she make the stuff herself?
Well, yeah, she designs and makes it from scratch, so it's all custom stuff, which is it is rare, absolutely rare on like a low budget film to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. There's probably not a lot of people that could do that. So it's as I've come to learn, it is many hours.
Mm-hmm. And for Witch Hunt, there's not necessarily period pieces, but there's a lot of different stuff than you would find around the cool hats and stuff. So was that one that's a little more involved for the costumes?
I actually think she's doing a lot more in Parts Unknown, because like she's designing like the wrestling outfits too, and there's like 5 of them. So like they're pretty complicated. Started posting up on my Facebook some pictures from it. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to take a look there, I didn't get through them all yet, but there's a couple promos up, and I think it's more complicated because it's a lot like more colorful. Yeah. But yet it has to look kind of fierce. So there's like a lot that's going into this. Witch Hunt was still a lot though. It wasn't quite. What we decided to do was not have it like really exist in any one era. Mm-hmm. So it was like we kind of just opened up the door to let her do creatively what she wanted to within reason.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the gimmicks for the wrestlers in Parts Unknown?
Well, Herman von Strasser, our main character and villain, he's very old school. He's got the manager, who's, Alex Hawk, the heavier set guy who comes out, distracts the referee and like hits him with a cane or something, so he's kind of like a cross between Harvey Whippleman and Paul Bearer. Uh-huh. And, Herman, who he manages, he's kind of like really pissed off, like one ECW guy, uh-huh. You know what I mean? Like he's got the barbed wire and just really wants to maim people. Nobody that really comes to mind off like top of my head, but he's really kind of nasty, and he's supposed to like live the gimmick. You know what I mean? They all live the gimmick. That's kind of what brings them to this state of mind that they're in. So they're all living the gimmick. Mm-hmm. There is no super gimmicky people, I guess. There's no trash men or IRSs. Nothing like that.
Duke the Dumpster Drosy.
Mm-hmm.
What that guy's doing? I haven't heard about him for years.
I don't know. I don't know anything about him.
Do you have a short at Happenstance Horror Fest?
I do, yeah. One of our shorts we made for 60 Seconds to Die, part 1. It's called Hobo. So, yeah, it's playing there.
Oh, very cool.
Tuesday.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will you be there?
I will be, yes.
Very cool. I'll be there as well.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'll see you there. Well, how did you come up with your accent in Witch Hunt?
Oh, my God. Well, it's supposed to be Bosnian.
Uh-huh.
But then I just said, well, how many people really know what a Bosnian accent sounds like?
Right.
So I said, nobody. So I'm going to sit here. I'm just going to come up with something that kind of sounds like that. Just weird. It's, kind of creepy, and just see how it plays out. And I remember talking like that for the first time, and people were like, are you going to do that the whole time? I'm like, yeah. Yes, I am.
I dig it. I liked it. I'm just thinking now, I wonder if there's anyone in Bosnia who hears that accent and thinks like what a lot of people in our area think when they hear Boston accents in movies. Like
Oh, they must. Yeah, they must. I doubt I had it down very well, so I just figured no one here knew the difference, so I can get away with it. It's not like doing an Irish accent. People are like, oh, that sounds bad. They don't know.
Right. So that brought up, what do you think when you hear really over-the-top Boston accents in movies?
I hate it. I'm like, nobody fucking talks like that. I went, I just saw a movie down south, and they're like, where the fuck are you from, man? They're like, we don't understand you. I'm like, have you ever watched a Ben Affleck movie? I don't understand him. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
I've
never been anyone talks like that either. So. And usually if I tell someone I'm from Massachusetts, they don't believe it because I think they expect everyone from Massachusetts to talk like that.
They do, yeah. They expect like this super thick, like, hey, what's going on, guy? How you doing? Like, it's like nobody talks like that. Maybe a couple people from Revere. That's it.
Mike O'D does kind of talk like that.
And Mike O'D, he's the other one. We actually lived in the same town. We grew up in the same town, so I should, in theory, sound like O'D.
Now, have you worked? I know you know him and stuff. Have you worked on any of his films?
No. We've worked on a lot of stuff. He's worked on my last 2 movies, and then a bunch of shorts for other people, and a lot of stuff for other people. Mm-hmm. But I don't. No, I didn't work on any of his movies because usually I don't crew much for other people. I just usually act.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't.
Do you prefer acting or the more creative side? I guess acting's creating too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a weird double-edged sword because I like to make my own stuff because that way I get to write it, I get to create it, I get to cast, and it has a certain look to it and a feel to it, and you're really telling the story you want to tell. But it's also, taking years off your fucking life with stress and having to deal with people and not, having no money and all that. Mm-hmm. So it's like awesome, but it's very difficult. And then acting is like you kind of have some fun and, it's long hours, but you kind of meet people. You can be one of the boys, not everybody hates you. But what sucks about acting is the fact we're in New England. So it's like a double-edged sword where it's like, I love to act, but I feel like I don't always have it to do. Mm-hmm. So I do like to be able to go back and create something myself, and just create a very weird movie that I'm not really going to get a chance to act in very often too. Mm-hmm. Not acting in Parts Unknown though. So
is this is that the first project you made where you're not acting in it, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
What do you think of that experience? Is it better, easier for you to to have all your energy in the directing and producing of it without worrying about you being in it?
I think it is easier. I think up until Gilgamesh, I think it was possible to just kind of throw on whatever clothes we had and then do it, and then things were just starting to get so complicated. It was like, I can't struggle to remember my lines because I'm trying to think if these shots are going to match up in post-production. Mm-hmm. So I think Witch Hunt, I said, okay, Witch Hunt is so fucked up and my character's so bizarre. I said, if I stop acting for myself, I can go out on that high note, and parts unknown, I'll just concentrate on trying to make it look the way it's supposed to, instead of giving myself an interesting role. And I've acted for a lot of other people in this past 2 years, probably more than before. So I got to do a couple things I wanted to do, and I'm sure I will again once Parts Unknown is wrapped.
Yeah. Now, when Parts Unknown is finished, what's like the plans to do with it? Would you like to bring to the conventions, the festivals, or right to DVD, video demand?
Yeah, I think video on demand is probably my ultimate goal with it. I think it's a movie that could do well if it got on certain platforms. I would be very tempted to actually try and partner up with some wrestling promotions, maybe show the movie, have a show. Obviously not a family-friendly show, but if there's promotions out there that didn't, that still kind of, I don't know if there really is, but still have those like crazier shows, then I feel like, I might try and partner up with something like that and get the movie out there that way if I could. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was like Combat Zone Wrestling, but I don't know if they ever really run New England.
Yeah, I might have to go elsewhere to do it, but I'd probably be willing to at this point.
Yeah. Now, when we talked about Paul and Ungovernable Films, I mentioned having social commentary in the movie, and there's a lot of anti homophobia in Witch Hunt. So is that something important to you?
Yeah, I sat there and I wrote it, and when I wrote it, I was thinking to myself that there's not in horror movies, you don't really see too much homophobia, and just gay characters just aren't really in horror that much. Just in general, you don't happen to see a lot of gay characters. Mm-hmm. And I said because Witch Hunt deals with religion so much, or I should say the kind of the over the top side of religion from every aspect, it was easy to write in, the homophobia and show the negative sides of that as well. And I'm certainly not anti-religious, because sometimes I'll get that question. People will be like, oh, what's your issue with religion? It's nothing. Watch the movie. There's a satanic cult in it too. It's not against anything in particular, but it's, it's kind of showing the negative side, when people take things too far. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's what I was thinking. Is I said, this is just something that's not addressed in horror very much. And I just thought it would be a topic that should be addressed in horror.
Yeah. You mentioned they're anti-religion, and I'm not a religious guy, but I do think sometimes it's almost kind of a cheap thing to put in your movie, because almost any time you see a priest or something in the movie, it's always going to be he's either a total pervert, or he's he's totally evil, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what is your background, and if you want to talk about it, are you a religious person? Is your family religious?
I was raised Catholic, but I mean, I'm not a religious person at this point. Yeah. I kind of take things as they come, people can believe whatever they want to believe. Mm-hmm. Doesn't bother me, as long as they're not trying to force it on other people and act crazy about it. I really don't care. I'm not an atheist. I believe in let's say, more than humanity. But I'm not devout in any particular realm of religion.
Mm-hmm. Well, what does your family think of your movies?
See, for a while, I think they were a little like, what the fuck?
Uh-huh.
And then by the time Witch Hunt came along, they just don't care anymore. You know, my father helps me out.
Oh, that's cool.
My mother was at the Witch Hunt premiere and actually watched that. Didn't want her there, but she came.
Uh-huh.
And actually watched, you know, that on the screen. And I didn't want her there because, you know, you see my ass in the movie. So I was like, well, you know, it is what it is. This is what I'm doing. And
yeah. So that was probably more the aspect you didn't want her there for. You didn't maybe not necessarily care about some of the gore or violence or anything, but more like the sexual stuff, especially when you're involved in it. Exactly,
yeah. And that's probably, I think that's the only movie that I was in with a lot of sexual stuff that I was involved in. So it was awkward, you know.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah. Now, were you allowed to watch like R-rated movies as a kid?
Yeah, I did. I watched a lot of action movies, though, you know, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone stuff. I'd watched that with my dad, and just, you know, so I was used to seeing people getting blown in hats, you know, and so to me, I'm pretty desensitized to it by now.
Yeah. It is strange that, because I like to ask that question to a lot of people who make horror movies, that it does seem more acceptable in like an action movie to see people blown in half or cut apart.
It does, yeah. Yeah, it does. For some reason.
Yeah.
For some reason, like, yeah, you could see Arnold Schwarzenegger cut somebody's like arm off in Commando, and people are just like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah.
You know, but Jason does it, and it's like, "Well, all right, we got to ban this. This is too much."
Yeah. As far as the horror movies, when did you get into horror movies?
I definitely watched them when I was a kid and stuff, but I think I got into like horror as a genre more as I actually got older, and started to direct the horror movies. And then I started to watch movies as reference and just started to appreciate it more, because I realized there was like a lot of movies that, you know, you don't see a lot as much, but they're pretty good. You know, like a lot. And in other words, what I'm trying to say is, like, you watch like the Hollywood horror movies in the theater or on Netflix, and they're terrible. But if you go and, you know, you go back a little bit and you watch the more practical effects, you know, and some of the 70s and 80s and 90s movies, and it's like, yeah, they're definitely memorable movies. They just are obscure now. So, you know, once I went back and saw a lot of that, I got a little bit more into horror as a genre, I think, because before that I watched a lot of, you know, action-y type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the specific movies that stuck out to you?
Well, my favorite horror movies are probably Hellraiser 1 and 2. Like, I like how dark they are. You know, I like how there's like a reason for all the gore and like the craziness. Like, it's not just a serial killer. It's like it has like a good story, you know. Let's see. I mean, that's probably, you know, a good place to start. When I was younger, I was, not that I'm not a fan, but, you know, a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street and, you know, all the sort of classic stuff. And, you know, I think, yeah, there might be some Fulci elements in parts unknown, so I'll say that.
Yeah. Would you like to make action movies?
The only way I'd really make an action movie if it was kind of like a shoot 'em up Commando, or, you know, like a Cobra type of thing, Death Wish, because that was like the style of action movies that I really liked. Not stupid stuff. I'm probably insulting people here, but whatever. Stupid stuff like the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, I like not that Stallone and Schwarzenegger have these realistic movies, but it's just within like the realm of reality where, you know, you have your like main star just blowing away all these like drug dealers and stuff. I just find it entertaining.
It's not a submarine chasing, cars and shooting torpedoes.
Exactly, yeah. That's just too much. That's comedy at that point.
Yeah, when I saw that trailer, I forget which movie I went to see, and it was at the I honestly thought, oh, this is like some spoof of action movies, and then it's like a real movie, and I was like, oh my god, how did I don't know anyone goes and sees something like that. When you said Witch Hunt had the premiere, where did it premiere at?
It was at Capitol Theater in Arlington.
Mm-hmm. So besides your mom being there, what's that like to watch your film with a group of people?
Oh, it's always it's a weird experience because like there's a lot of anxiety. You're like, are people going to like this? Is it going to project right? That's always like you have all like that weird anxiety as director because it's like you want everything to look the way it's supposed to look and sound the way it's supposed to sound, and but yeah, it's always a cool experience because people react big to them at the premieres. Like they'll cheer when someone dies and stuff like that. So it's always cool to be in the theater for that.
Mm-hmm. Mike O.D. here, he wants to know, would you think about doing a cameo in the wrestling scene as a rowdy fan?
Well, as Mike O.D. knows, Parts Unknown, and now everybody else can know too, Parts Unknown takes place 12 years after Witch Hunt and slightly ties into the plot line. So if I'm going to be in it, I guess I have to be my character from Witch Hunt. So, and he just said to himself, oh, fuck, I forgot. Yes, that is true, but I don't think I'm going to do it because that in-ring day is going to be tough to shoot. So I probably will not be doing that.
Yeah. So he went from hunting witches to just being a wrestling fan in his older days.
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe he retired. Maybe he just wants to watch some wrestling and crack open a Bud Light. I don't know.
No. Later on in the show, we're gonna have James Balsamo on the show, and I understand that you're gonna be in Lich.
Yes.
So you can.
I am.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask him what it is, but the only thing I know about a Lich is as soon as I saw the title, because I was a big D&D player as a kid, was Lich was a monster in Dungeons and Dragons. And, so
yeah,
I don't.
That's all I really know myself. Yeah, Lich is just like an undead thing. And
I remember
that's all I really know.
Yeah, I think it was like the hardest thing for the cleric to turn was the Lich.
Yeah, it's supposed to be powerful, but that's all. That's all I know.
Yeah, it's not like an undead creature I think I've ever heard of outside of D&D.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I don't know if I have either. I don't know if it's been in anything. So
yeah,
except for the movie The Lich. Now it's in The Lich.
Exactly. Then there was the Draco Lich. It was even more powerful because that was like the undead dragon.
That sounds pretty terrifying.
It was indeed. So, did you play D&D?
I didn't. No. I just I like the imagery and stuff of it. So I was always kind of, I was a creeper. I would just sit there and watch all the cool, play with the artwork. Cool. But I didn't actually play the game.
Oh, okay. But yeah. So wrestling, horror movies, D&D, as you can tell, was a very cool kid as a child. Stuff that
all right.
That's an ant crawling across my screen. Derek wants to know any word on future films. Well, you talked about Parts Unknown, and I guess is there anything after Parts Unknown? But I assume you're probably putting all your time and energy into that.
Yeah. I mean, almost 100% of my energy is going into Parts Unknown. I have not really conceived anything beyond that because of its level of involvement and money. So it's kind of just, we'll have to see. I think usually when I'm shooting something, I always have an idea of what I want to do next, even if it evolves into something else. And I think this is the first time that I don't. I said, I'm just going to have a clean slate. and not jump the gun and on this. And there's parts unknown is it's kind of like every time we shoot, it just keeps evolving into something bigger, So it's like it's hard, It's one of those things where I'm like, I can't start thinking about the future. I hope to maybe do a little acting afterwards. Maybe not write and direct something so quick.
Right. You talked about the money aspect. When you make a movie, how do you go about financing? Is it all your own money involved in it? Do you ever use crowdfunding, or do you find someone to sponsor the movie? Or
usually most of it's my own money. Like, we did crowdfund a little bit with this movie. That's usually it. I mean, you just have to convince a lot of people to do you a lot of favors and feel very guilty about it. I think that's how you get these things done. And unfortunately, I think the next step would be somebody putting in at least half the money or something. But, that's easier said than done.
Who actually does like the gore in your movies? Is that anything you're involved in, or
the gore? Well, this Parts Unknown. It's an FX artist. What is? Oh, her name's V. I'm trying to think of her company. Blood Moon FX is what she's. What her company is. She's the supervisor, and we have a team of like 8 fucking people. It's seriously ridiculous. Everybody's pretty good. So I mean, it's going to be a lot of gore. I think in the prior movies it was kind of just people coming together. They all had a different FX person. I don't think there was anyone too consistent.
So you said Mike O'D's working on Parts Unknown. What's his involvement in it?
He is, yeah. He's the second assistant director on the project.
I had a chance to see him work on something. He's a very professional man. He's got all kinds of cool gizmos. He is,
yeah. OD's a good asset to have around.
Yeah. And he's got all kinds of neat little gizmos.
Yeah.
He's got a working dolly and everything. I was like, man, this guy knows what he's doing.
It is good to have a working dolly.
It is. And he's got hats with his name on it, OD. So you can't forget who he is. But no, he's a cool guy. So where can people right now follow Parts Unknown online? There's a
fan page on Facebook for Parts Unknown, but if people are looking for our general fan pages, they can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Boston Undead. Those are the official. That's the official one that'll take you to where you want to go. You can probably find everything else from there, and I also have a website, bostonfilmfamily.com.
Very cool. And for you personally, or would you prefer they just follow those pages?
They can do whatever they want.
All right.
I'm cool with letting people on my Facebook. I don't care what they see.
Well, very cool. All right. Well, it's been good having you on, and maybe when it's closer to Parts Unknown coming out, or after I get to see it when it's released, I'll be back on.
Sounds awesome. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is Barbara Magnolfi of Suspiria, and you're listening to Without Your Head.